Hi, Chris. Hello.
John, how are you doing?
Pretty good. How's Germany?
Sunny for once, which I think my fellow Germans are getting the sun cream out already because we have an afternoon of sun.
You should definitely get one. It's also sunny here in Kigali. Kigali has this mist weather. When it start in the morning, it's sunny, and then out of so sudden, just windy. It's raining. I've gotten
Yeah,
used to.
it's lovely here right now, so come to Hamburg.
All right. Let's people put it in now. People are joining in. Let's give it 59 seconds. So usually what we do, just head over to the chat box and let us know where you're joining us from. This is a way of connecting with our audience, our
Mhm.
community.
I'm always keen to get all continents down. I mean, except Antarctica or something like this, but all major continents we need to get. So, let me just make a start. Chris from Hamburg, Germany. Yeah. And we say morning. Yes. Say hello. There we go.
Okay.
Don in Canada. I've just spoken to someone in Canada. This was today. Canada is big. Rebecca in UK. So we have the North America. We have Africa. I'm always doubtful to put Africa such a large continent. You can't represent all of Africa, John. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I cannot.
No. There we go. Florence. Florencia is from Mozambique. Okay, well that's good. Fiona from Scotland. Hi, Fiona. Nice to see you again.
Left Ghana. Malay.
Mali, Christina from Vienna. Oh, I'm off to Vienna this weekend. Hopefully, if I recover. Kenya, Ghana, Malawi again. Okay, I think we got Africa covered. Although Ghana, West Africa. Okay, Uganda. Nobody from Asia so far.
Yeah. Middle East. Lebanon.
Rana, Lebanon. I love Lebanon. Rana from Lebanon and Rihanna from South Africa. That's gonna cause so many confusions during the discussion part. Nice to see you all. Okay, have you excluded anybody from Southeast Asia and Asia today,
I don't know.
John?
It's
Is that the way
strange.
you set it up?
I don't know. That's quite weird. But,
Actually, it's not. It's 2 p.m. here in Germany, so it must be 6, 7 p.m. in most places over there. So
yeah, that could be the reason.
fair enough.
But you're right.
Hey,
All
it's 3 minutes past two, and the German in me is getting a little bit anxious.
right. Okay, Chris. Let me kickstart that. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're joining us from. I would like to say a pleasant welcome to this webinar on big values, no money. So before we get started, we have a live poll who want to engage with our community to ask you where you stand in terms of your organization. So please participate. Live poll is on the screen right now. Let us know your feedback.
Can I vote as well?
No, you cannot.
Oh, damn it. Anybody heard that? That's just discriminatory here.
All right, what's up coming in? Well, I'll give it 59 seconds and I'll read out the results to you, Chris, in the community, so you can get started with the webinar.
I'd love to see the results first. Is that possible?
Hmm. Yes, it's very possible. I'll share that.
Okay, it's live. Right now, which are the best? We're already adapted and we're finding our feet in the new landscape. 20%. Awesome. The middle of making it is the vast majority. We're mostly running the old model, hoping the funding picture turns 7%. I think we're running low on hope here.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm not sure yet. I'm here to think about it. Okay, so that's probably. Would you categorize, John, the bottom two options into one?
On live pool? No, it's not possible.
I mean, if you're not sure yet, and if you're working on hope that the grants return, it's sort of the same thing, right? No?
So, Chris, the result is clear. Majority said that they see the change, but they're still in the middle of making it. So I'll now turn this over to you to get
Okay,
started with the webinar.
cool. Okay, let's get this started. Welcome, everybody, and good afternoon from Hamburg, Germany. John, thank you so much for setting this up. Much appreciated. It's lovely to see so many here again on a topic that is not technical, but it does have technical components. So my aim here today is to have a 15, 20 minutes, maybe 25 maximum of boring you with my terrible German accent, sharing some insights from what we see from our 300 or so partners all over the world, and then have a lively conversation. Now, the best part of these webinars is the part where the webinar ends and the conversation starts. So that means if you're here for a session where you can just lean back and talk and listen, then I'm sorry, you're the wrong webinar. It would be lovely if you ask questions. If it's a manageable number of people today, which it looks to be, then we can also, unmute your microphone if your connection is good enough, if you're up for it, and we can have a conversation about it. The whole length should be about 40 minutes. So if you're in continental Europe, you should be out of here by 2:45, 20 to 3 or so. As usual, put your questions in the Q&A, please, not in the chat. John will monitor both. Is that right, John?
Yes, that's correct.
Cool. Trying to pick up the stray ones. There are sometimes some webinars and some sector conversations where we have so many questions we can't answer them all. But we have gotten to the habit of downloading them and emailing every single one of you afterwards with a take on the question. So that's our role here at Amsterdam as a social enterprise, to try to make these things pragmatic and useful. So please do ask away. If I don't have an answer, which happens more than I would care to admit, or if we can't get around to it, then we will get to it by email to you later. And very often we have conversations with people afterwards. We are not a commercial enterprise. We do invest quite a lot of money and time, which is the same thing, into engaging with rebels and leaders in organizations who want to make a change and who are still committed to the SDGs or other goals similar to that. Good, let's kick it off. In case you don't know me already, my name is Chris. I've set up Amsterdam International 2011. So it makes me very old, basically. I have the incredible fortune and duty to work with 300 NGOs every year through a partnership, and then there's a few assignments here as well. I'm a chartered accountant by trade, but together with my colleagues, we really spend lots and lots of time in the field. I lived in South Sudan, Indonesia, in Laos, in Kenya a lot of times, in Nigeria, and in South Africa. And that practitioner mindset is something that we hire against here as well, and that we absolutely celebrate. So, get down to real basis. I'm doing this webinar by myself because half my colleagues are at the Philanthropy Summit in Singapore. The other half is at the Partnership Conference in London. And the third half is at the Impact Investment Working Group in Geneva. And I got slightly sick, and therefore I'm here. There we go. That's what we cover today. There are 6 things that we would like to talk about to take your leadership team through. It's not a framework, it's not theory, it's very much sort of stories and things that you can say out loud in a room and start real conversations. I want to equip you basically with, oh, the poll just stop here. There we go. I want to equip you with a brief one-pager about how the sector changed in the last 3 years or so, 2.5 years. I want to sorry, can you see my cursor? Is that something you can see, Jonathan?
Yes, correct. Yes,
okay, so you know
moving
it.
around.
Thank you. I want to give you some evidence And some stories from organizations we know, those who adapted early and who are doing well, and those who are dilly-dallying around. That hopefully triggers a conversation and some questions here. I want to give you some inside sort of stories again, not management science, about what it takes to align a whole organization behind a change and adapting the operating and financial model. That's if we get all that done. So it sits this webinar sits at the intersection between realizing a business model change is necessary and what do we do about this right now and how to mobilize the human side of it. Good. Did I get this right, Jonathan? Is that about the purpose today? That's what.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you so much, Chris.
Thanks, mate. Right. I would shudder and I would shake my head if any of this is new to anybody here. I don't think it is, but maybe it's useful to see it on a single slide. And by the way, we will share the slides later, right? They are freely available to be downloaded and shared by anybody. Is that correct?
That's correct. We're going to share that after 48 hours.
Thank you very much, John. No idea why 48 hours, but so be it. So the official development assistance has basically not just come to a halt, but declined by nearly a quarter since last year alone. It's the largest annual contraction of official development assistance on the record in 2025. It's basically a bloodbath. And we are back down to the levels of 2015. So you can say that basically 10 years of financial progress in ODA has been wiped out over the last 2 years or so. So in real terms, the ODA now sits in 2025 at the same level it was when the Agenda 2030 was adopted. That tells you something about there just not being enough resources about fulfilling, in this case, the Agenda 2030 agenda. The vast majority out of donors have cut aid. Nearly absolutely everybody. Those who haven't are in the process of either doing so or changing what they fund to focus more on selected countries, selected ways of doing things. They question the whole structure of giving grants. There is a narrative that I hear from the donors I work with every week in that grants in large areas don't work. It's just feeding a system, which is, a little hard to hear, considering that these donors are the ones that built a donor-centric development in aid sector for the last 60, 70 years. So, it's a bit like the pot calling the kettle black, they say in England. In Sub-Saharan Africa, the cut is even more severe than across ODA. Sub-Saharan African aid has, development assistance to SSA has cut down by more than 25%. That is pretty harsh. And we mean here the type of ODA that is funded by that provides grants. So this is not a rough patch. It's very much a structural reset. And where does that end up? Well, there are sort of 3 major shifts that are reshaping the funding landscape. The fact is that it's not just about the public money retreating and the grants retreating. There are these fundamental shifts that are running underneath the surface for several years now into every funding conversation. And there are a few things we have to understand about why this moment is different from previous funding crunches. Public money, it has to be said, hasn't just retreated. It's basically been replaced by a different kind of capital with a completely different set of expectations and structures. So if we look at the donor behavior here first, and let's take one figure from the ODA decline. There's an 80 billion decline in 2025 in grants. So donors are, as I said just now, concentrating on fewer themes, fewer geographies, fewer partners. It's focusing mostly on humanitarian, on life-saving assistance. Development agenda is in rapid decline. And the same sort of narrative becomes due that when you talk to the donors who are now setting their 2027 to 2031 budget here in Europe and in the US as well. On the other hand, private capital is engaging. It's not the savior, so be very careful, but it's definitely engaging. So when we had a 23% drop in ODA, it's very encouraging to hear that the impact investment market has grown by a compound 21% since 2019. So it hasn't grown quite as much as the ODA has been retreating, but fact is, pension funds, family offices are now the single largest pool of impact capital, and that is definitely increasing. The problem is that this impact investment market, now worth $1.57 trillion US. That's I don't even know how many zeros that is. Has grown so much. The problem, the money is looking for the same opportunities and problems that you work on, but it's not looking for the same conversation. There's a massive gap between the NGOs grant implementers and the private sector. A lot of it is seeking to preserve its capital or seeking a small return. It expects data. It expects a counterpart who speaks its language. And the difference in the money being there, private capital being there, and the private capital being used are those three things. Is the project able to generate a return or at least preserve the capital invested? Is the data there beyond M&E? And do you speak the same language? So one part of the language is the speed. Traditional structures in many of our NGO structures are simply too slow. Impact investors and investors generally are fairly impatient people, whereas it used to take month and month to go from a concept to grant decision. We are here seeing structures that convert in a matter of 2-3 weeks, from initial conversation to concept to investment decision to deployment of funds. And at speed, I've noticed with many of our NGO partners, many simply are not used to that speed. Many people have administrative hurdles where they need board decisions to start a project in a new country, for example, or where they need to go to some sort of governance body in order to authorize the investor working with that organization. And whilst these structures and this due diligence is super important, a 3-4 weeks delay in order to wait until that governance body or that board comes together and makes a decision simply often is too slow. Things just go away. So decision cycles, reporting cycles from the grant architecture, they're sort of dinosaurs. They're designed for a decade past. And we need to think about how we move this over. So the big question is, what do we do? That's the sector. What can we change? And I think it has to be said that stressing on the purpose of our organization is essential. After all, these investors speak to you because of your mandates, because of your values, because of your purpose, and your implementation capacity in country. For a privately or co-funded structure, you need structures that are fast, that are scalable, replicable, that earn a sort of return. So there's areas where this doesn't work, many areas where this does work, and it has to be local. Access to that grassroots local level is a huge benefit that many of our NGO partners have. But the business model behind it needs to work. So I want to be a bit direct here. In my experience, the answer to that question shown here is no. Purpose is why we exist. But purpose alone doesn't pay the salaries. It doesn't give money, but most importantly, to those people who we want to help. It doesn't keep programs running when the grant ends. Purpose is not negotiated with a DFI or with an investor. So the organizations I've watched close in the last 3 years weren't short of purpose, not at all. That's why I work with them. I think they're fantastic. But they were short of a sustainable operating model. And most of them, frankly, knew it. They knew years before this came to fruition. And there's a fair number of deals which we had to move over to another organization simply because they were faster. So these are sort of three patterns I see, and I would love it if people sort of came forward and say, yeah, I see myself in 1, 2, or 3. Am I the adapting? I'm working in an organization that adapted early, that has tried and stalled to some point of view, or sort of stuck in the middle, or that even has resisted. And I'll give you examples for 3 of them. I'm obviously tied by confidentiality, but they are real-life examples. But I will never, ever use information or data that is private. But let me take a look at the thriving element here first, those who adapted. It's a mid-sized health-related organization in East Africa. We've worked with them since 2020, I believe, 2019, so ongoing partnership. So we have a strong partnership. They looked at their income base and they saw that in sort of 90%, or the vast majority of their funding came from a small number of bilateral donors, 2 of them. So they decided it's pretty an exposed and pretty existential risk. And I know some of you have had the same conversations here. So they've spent 18 months building an earned income revenue stream from the health data that they have. And then they developed an investable product on it. That was painful. This was controversial internally even. We're talking about people's data. The executive director told me she nearly lost her job twice over this. And today, they're in a position to spool off and offer to the sector one health boosting project after another. We've just gone through the 3rd funding round on the 2nd project. And they are one of the most financially resilient organizations in their peer group, in their growth. They are not growing massively. I mean, they're growing by a healthy 10%, but no single form of income is now more than 20%. So they're pretty resilient. They can now afford to play back to their purpose. They can now take patient and their health mandate way more serious because not a single source of funding and earned income is dominant. That's a great story. I want to give you one that has sort of tried and stalled and see if you sort of align yourself. It's an organization in the education space we work with since a number of years. They saw the problem and they commissioned the strategy with us, and we started the work after the strategy was designed. We got board approval for it. We've gotten champions organized. We started project and product development groups, all good. But later on, the board and the CEO had some sort of very fundamentally different views on whether earned revenue was compatible with their values or not. Neither of them said it out loud, but it was pretty clear. So 2 years on, they're still functional, they're still as exposed, still having the same conversations in private, and they're sort of stuck in the middle here, just because the conflict isn't called out and a solution isn't made. And it really is the management inability to be honest to each other and say, we have a conflict here, and we are now sitting on the fence, that is making the entire organization more risky and sort of very dependent on its few diminishing grants right now. And then the other one is almost better than that, couldn't move. I won't go into too many details here because I'm burning too much time, but I've watched a couple of organizations the last 18 months where I personally respect the officers extremely, but they had to close programs that they've run for decades. And it's painful. It's really hard to see. And it's not because there was no good impact, not because the need disappeared or anything, just because they couldn't find the grant funding anymore. And they only looked for grant funding and they couldn't find it, and they've gone down. One of the board members said it perfectly. I remember that meeting where they had to shut down another country office. And they basically said, look, we should have moved years ago because right now we're becoming irrelevant and I like this less. I thought that was a moment of truth there. Cool. So we're in this culture debate. And where culture is carried by the culture needs to be carried by the transformation needs to be carried by the culture and not to block it. I sat in a lot of rooms where the change was discussed and then nothing actually changed. I've sat in these rooms where the conversation produced a different organization within 12 months. So a lot of it changed, amazingly changed. And what's the difference between these two? I personally think the difference was almost never the strategy document. It was whether the people at the top were willing to say the hard things in public and not just in private. Whether they had the guts to say what is happening and how we should step up for the people we serve, which is the people who need our services. And there's a sort of I've come to the habit of doing sort of a one-sentence test in these board meetings or in these program meetings, where I ask, once you've done the strategy, can your team repeat your strategic direction in a single sentence or in an elevator pitch? And if not, you really don't have a strategy. You have a document. So I think that's the situation some of you might be in or experience and gotten over. I would love to hear from you. I'm running out of time here. So here's a bit of a framework that can help. It's again meant to, excuse me, I have to sneeze. Sorry, I'm not feeling great at the moment. There's a bit of a test that you can do. There are 4 things that sort of move together. And leadership clarity is definitely my top one. Operations that change, if there's a clear direction, if they can say these things in plain language, if every senior voice repeats it, and the team should be able to carry this as well, that is unifying the whole organization behind it. And it doesn't matter whether someone is a project analyst or a CEO, they all need to be aligned. The second one is, okay, that's our purpose, our message. Does it actually change our Monday morning? And a strategy that doesn't operationalize change is pretty worthless. If the business development team still scans for grants on Mondays mornings and doesn't talk to the impact investors, doesn't talk to the program managers on Monday morning to push out a new proposal into the market, then it's pretty worthless. So if financial, the operationalization of the strategy is definitely way more important. And that together, 1 and 2, sort of create a culture that is mutually reinforcing. Then yes, the financial model. There needs to be a financial model that reflects the strategy. And that's the importance of, I guess, the strategy document after all. We need to have a business strategy and a business model and a financial strategy that actually reflects the operational realities on the ground. So in this health organization I mentioned earlier, they produce health data as a byproduct of the operation that they were able to monetize ethically, might I say so, with very clear guidance and very good, strong restrictions. And that additional income was a layer of finance into the organization that was ultimately invested into by an impact investor. And that in total represents only 20% or so of their total income. It's significant, but it's certainly not dominant. So the financial model reflects the operational realities, and that's where it worked. If you're working, very bluntly, if you're working on a problem that is complex, interdimensional, and interwoven across multiple countries that you need 50 years to solve, be it primary education in country XYZ, for example, and your financing structure is only lasting you for 3-4 years, then there is obviously a disconnect. And that disconnect is more likely to shift us and steer us away from our purpose towards sort of firefighting on Monday morning, rather than being able to act with integrity along the purpose that we really want to. Or in shorter terms, we need to be able to afford the values that we hold. These values, they stay. And they really are The key value is the mandate of the organization that remains the same. That there's no change here. What we do, who we serve, why we do it, that stays the same. Just the business model supporting that changes. Cool. That's half an hour, so I'm slightly over time. Sorry, John. We do have a small announcement. Jean, shall I make this announcement, or do you want to?
You can go ahead, Chris. You technically already. Pretty
Okay.
nice.
Even that feels a bit weird because we just talked about moving away from grants, but there are still some grants, but they're harder and harder to work. So please head over to grantwire.org. Grantwire is a new funding workspace for NGOs in this new reality. Grantwire identifies, learns your organization. You can answer a series of questions, learns your organizations, and then gives you the available grants only that you like and unlike over time. So the system learns with you. And the best of all, it's free now, it's free tomorrow, it will always stay free. We don't want to earn any money with it. It's an AI-driven platform that basically learns about your funding preferences over a number of weeks as you use it, and then gets better and better at finding the right funding grants for you there. So, and that shouldn't cost 5K in subscription every year. That should be free of charge. So we thought that's our way that we can help, and I promise it's going to be free forever. But by the way, it's in beta, so we just launched it last Thursday. Is that right, John?
Yeah, that's correct. Last Thursday.
Thursday. And so please give ample of feedback. We've had a doubling of the user base since last Thursday and lots of feedback. I know my AI engineers are doing some heavy overtime at the moment in implementing that all, but we really appreciate all the feedback you're giving. So please head over to grantwire.org. Maybe, Jonathan, you can share the link directly in the chat.
Yes, let me do that right now, Chris.
Cool. So we are then, I can skip that, right? We basically talked about this. I can do. Yeah. So we are then, let's head over to the questions, whatever they are. I'm going to stop the slide so you can see the big screen. And I am sure there are no questions whatsoever, right?
But we have a few. We have a few questions coming in.
Ah, damn it.
Sorry.
Sorry?
So I got the first question that says, this call is incredible. I have to leave. Okay, that's not a question. The recording will be shared after this session. Yes, we recorded the webinar.
This call is incredible. Did you hear that? Can you just say this again? Yeah, come on.
This is for you, Chris. How do you build a portfolio that is relevant for impact investor?
Eleonora?
Yeah.
Eleonora, I hope I pronounced that right. I'm sorry if I've just butchered your name. The short answer is you stick to what you're good at. This is what I sort of meant and tried to highlight at your mandate. What you do doesn't change. We have to change the business model and the financing behind it. Now, I'll be the first one to say that private capital is not going to be the savior of the day. If you work in life-saving assistance, humanitarian advocacy, it's difficult there, very, very difficult indeed. If you work, however, in any of the areas where you can have a revenue model, be that in health, be that in energy, education, agriculture, just to name a few, then you can use your services to create something that doesn't just give money away, but earns some sort of revenue, doesn't have to be profitable, is scalable, so repeatable over many times, and is local. And depending on what you do, I know nothing about your organization or indeed where you're writing from. Then if you have that in your programs, then we can certainly find you design a project and find the impact investor. You saw it in the numbers, the money is there. The investors that I keep talking about, talking to every day, it's always the same question. They come to us and say, hey, where are the bankable projects? where can I invest, some scale, some money here. Anything more than 5 million would be nice. Where I don't need a massive return on investment, but it would be nice after 3-4 years to walk away with inflation beating. So we're not talking about the kind of investors who want 10x and 20%. It's not my type of crowd of investment anyway, to be honest. They wouldn't talk to Human Planet and to MZN. But the kind of investor who already come with a clear enough mandate, but who just don't believe in grants anymore, or who just don't have the grants anymore. As I said, we've given our grants to humanitarian purposes, and now we'd like to do some development work, and we do need to do it through partnering and through impact investment. I hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Hope that answered your question. We have another question from Sam Mubin. This one says the current situation is in crisis. The growth economics model is not useful to reduce inequalities, poverty, and violation of human rights. Need to access the local and natural resources with climate resilience towards building economic of everyone. How, Chris? Don't know how.
Yeah, I'm currently working with a university. We're producing an article, Shah, is it? You said that is pretty much talking about what you're designing. It's sort of between utopia and reality. You're right. The current economic model is extractive at its very core. There are many people who are then sort of would like to completely do away with the current way of working and do away with the current capitalism and build something completely new. The reality is, however, if you look at history, for anything new to be created takes decades of change. And the social turmoil, the crisis, the wars, the disruption, the destroyed livelihoods that will happen in those decades are certainly not something we all want to wish for. So if we don't want these sudden disruptions, for example, that happened after the First World War, then we're going to have to accept a gradual change. The problem is that the climate and the economic situation puts time pressure on us. We do not have 150, 200 years to change our economic model. So we need to be more intentional about it. We need to be more critical about it. We need inspired leaders who sort of saying, yeah, the current model is deeply broken. We have to change it. We have to change it faster than it would naturally allow us to do this. So we don't have the 200 years of change to go to a new sort of economic model. So we need to be more intentional about it. And we have to probably get this done in the next 15, 20, 30 years latest. It's a generational task of massive proportion. But all of you here can actually do something about it. NGOs are a product of a donor-centric world. That the donors are about to become less central. So you can actively work on changing your business model, of working with the private sector, of working with investors, of working with your, not for your beneficiaries and to make them your customers respectfully, and become the kind of organization that is evolved enough and diversified enough to apply your values. Sorry, that was a big answer. I hope it made any sense, Shah. Once we've gotten the article or it's morphing into a book out, we can certainly share it.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. It's another question from Emmanuel. This one say, I think he meant invest. An investor interested in for-profit or both for-profit and charity, the ones you are connected with. And this is for you, not Chris.
Where do I see this question? I just would love to
This question is in the chats.
Can you repeat the question?
Are investor interested in for-profit or both for-profit and charity?
Both.
So
investors are not a monolith. We're gonna have to accept the fact that there are, just like there are many different charity workers, there are many different investors. Investors themselves don't behave the same for all investments. I've seen investors who, on the one hand, are incredibly hawkish and going in and expecting deals that give them 10x, 15x return within 2, 3 years. The same investor, the same afternoon, turned around and says, right, so that's done. I'd like to use a part of my money to invest into some really good health solutions. I don't even care if I get a profit. It would be nice to keep my capital back. So completely different behavior metrics from the same person, the same capital stack in different areas. Over the last 10 years, Human Planet was found as Human Planet is the private sector investment advisory firm of Amsterdam. And we've become known in the impact investment space, to look more at this conscious capital, this impact investments sphere, so by the time they talk to us, the vast majority know that they are not going to make 10, 15% on this. And this works. I mean, we've done a large fund in Lebanon. I know someone here from Lebanon is here, where the investors walked away with 5.1%. So you can get more in any stock market over 4 years, much more. But that's exactly the kind of investment they wanted. And the investor was very happy. And in fact, for Fund 2, they're just going to leave the money in there and say, recycle it. Can we set up a second 4-year program? So we don't even need to fundraise. And that's the sort of investors we work with.
Good. So another one in the Q&A. This one say, I think this person meant, what is the difference as it relates to private equity sector actors? What is the difference?
Don, private equity investors have a bad rap, sometimes for very good reasons, very valid reasons. And investors and finance people like me have a bad rap because we invent our own language. Private equity is the name given to a tranche of investors who look at non-publicly traded companies, invest into them, and get out quickly, doubling, tripling their investment, either by taking the company apart and launching it in pieces, or by selling it off to the next investor quickly. They're sometimes seen as the ravens and the hawks of business. That's certainly true in some instances. But if you step back from that narrowish Hollywood-like definition of private equity, then you see a equity fund, a privately held fund that invests into that needs to have a diversified investment portfolio. On the far profitable end, they have maybe some deals that they're expecting a massive return from. The vast majority, they're expecting market rate returns, so 7% a year or something like this one. But then at the lower end, they are happy to either experiment and or do some impact. And do some good, either in strategic support of the other investments. So we've seen investors investing into aerospace, with the logistics supply chain goes through West Africa. They said, look, my biggest risk in that aerospace portfolio is that the supply chain in West Africa is failing. So therefore, I invest into health initiatives and infrastructure initiatives there in order to support my other portfolio. Or they are generally saying, look, we are a large corporation. We produce pens. We like to invest into some schools who use our products. So it's to the bank. I hope that makes sense.
So now I hope that answers your question. And if you want to follow up, please reach out to Chris. It's chris@humanplanet.com or chris@mzinternational.com. So another question here from Jen Eves. I'm working for a mid-sized Norwegian NGO, which is more or less 80% grant-based. We recently started to look into international foundations, family offices, private sectors with limited HR capacities. Where do you think that the best return on time invested is?
It's a good question. Jean-Yves, thank you very much for the question. It's where's I can't tell you exactly where the best time is. You are the other NGOs we work with are very soon hitting the problem that they speak a very different language to family offices and private sector investment offices. And they're hitting the problem that they can't go to these family offices and say, what do you want? Let us design a program. It needs to be the other way around. You need to be propositional about it. So the best time invested, I can tell you, is thinking long and hard about your programs, creating a pitch, not a reply to an RFP, that is scalable, local, expandable, and risk adjusted. That's really important, particularly if it goes to some frontier markets. And then go with that pitch to some of the people you've mentioned. You will get feedback on it. The feedback is not going to be an absolute no, and very likely the feedback is not going to be an absolute yes, but can we change this or that? Oh, the risk is too high. Can we adjust it somehow? Very quickly, then you will get into pretty technical risk investment adjustment calculations. At that point, at the very latest, you need some sort of advice. Or if you're doing this at scale, so if you do this times 20, then it's probably cheaper to hire someone who can do this. If you're doing it with 15 to 20 projects, then you're going to spend less money hiring an advisor who doesn't just have the technical abilities, but who has the network as well.
Thank you, Chris. Jen, I hope that answered your question. Again, as always, if you need to do clarity or follow up, please feel free to reach out to Chris. It's Chris at mzinternational.com. It's easy. There's another one follow up from Don. Don say, are you willing to partner with NGOs in making that change?
Am I willing to partner with them?
Yep.
Okay, that's my job, yes. MZN's job is to build better NGOs. So I'm not just willing, I've done that for 18 years now. So yeah, no, definitely willing to do that. I mean, there needs to be, we're in a very lucky situation at MZN that we can select the most impactful organizations to work with. So if it's clear that this is a large organization that just does a paper and there's not going to be real change, then it's probably not us. If it's a small organization that generally has a good solution and is generally up for some change, then I'd much rather engage there.
Okay, it's not a follow-up question. I think Chris, you can see that. Are private equity willing to change?
No. No. Don. No. This private equity is seeing impact investment as another asset class. It's valuable. It's being institutionalized. It's not massively scaling. It is the largest growth in private finance towards ODA. But they also are not free to do something completely random. You're not going to turn a private equity investor into a non-profit charity worker anytime soon. But there is this tranche of investments which dwarfs anything you ever had in ODA or in grants, that if you're presenting the project risk-adjusted, scalable, local, and really, really well presented with a clear funds flow, with a very clear exit route, then it fits into their investment model, and then it works. One thing on that, what I am not doing is I will not structure programs that allow private capital to basically make a return on grants that take all the risk. So, but that's a subset of investors and I would hope most of them come to expect that when talking to Human Planet and to MZN, is we will ask the investors to actively participate in the risk. We can't use grants in the blended finance structure. We can't use grants or guarantees from donors or from donations or indeed the NGO as a cushion, a risk cushion for LPs and private equity and any other investor to just walk away with their usual profits. And there's enough investors out there who understand that and who are willing to accept more risk, do something new, and generally share into the progress that they're funding. I hope that makes sense.
Okay, he noticed that. So this is clear for Donna. There's another question. Yeah, it's quite interesting, Chris. This is for you. When you talked about private funders, are you talking about international or local? In my country, it looks like the private sector does not invest much in development projects.
So, so do you know from whom this question, where this question, what is local to the question asker, to the questioner is? What is local here? Is it,
I
are we
think
talking
I think
Africa, Europe,
Mozambique, Africa.
Mozambique? Okay. So it's a very interesting question. I had a project not in Mozambique, but not far away from you, earlier last week only, where we have published the investment pitch. And I thought, this is me holding my hands up, I got wrong, this would primarily go to European investors who have previously invested into this country. And we had it all. We had our tracking list, we had our approach list, and I made a few calls, and the reception was interesting. Let's talk about this more, and sort of standard work, to be honest. Nothing to write home about, nothing majorly important, different here. And we were about to get some traction after a couple of weeks last week, and then early last week, a funder and investor group from that country origin says, "Why didn't you call us? We've just heard from Frankfurt that you're looking to invest money. We are here. We have our banking infrastructure. We would like to invest. We're in country. It's down the road where I live. I just never had the bankable project." And I've got to be honest, and I've come clean here in public, that I knew of that potential investor, but because they've never invested into a charity before, I discounted them as a credible investment choice. The CEO told me, typical awesome East African story, so just called me on WhatsApp saying, "Why are you not thinking about me? Why didn't you call me?" So, well, I'm sorry, but you never invested into a charity project before. Says, "Yes, because there was no investable charity project. Now there is an investable charity project. I'd like to invest." So I said, "Mea culpa, I'm very, very sorry. I'm in Nairobi this summer. Shall we discuss it then?" He says, "I don't need you here. I can talk to them directly." I said, "Yes, you can. Absolutely. Let me connect you." Perfect. And they're off they are. So that was a lovely experience. And I think they've actually, I got a singular thumbs up by WhatsApp on Monday. I think it means that they're progressing. I need to re-engage.
All right, Chris, we are over time, and if you have any last word for our community, we have a couple of questions, but we cannot take all of them now, obviously.
Cool.
So,
Can we do this by emails? Because I need to dash as well.
yes. Any last word for the community before we wrap this up?
Just thank you very much for joining us to the bitter end here of this conversation. I know this is hard. I know in this group there are rebels. There are people who want to make the change, who are running up against the walls internally in your organizations. I'd like to say, A, that I've got the deepest respect for you, and do not lose your steam, do not lose your energy. I would very much like to support you, if that is you, in what is basically no smaller feat than making private money use for the SDGs and for the people and the matters that really count. And that is the overarching mission that we have here of making good money go to good people and good purpose. If we manage that in our generation, we've done something right. And I thank you all in advance, and all current partners and all future partners in making that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris, and to our community, thank you for sticking around. Do have yourself a pleasant time wherever you join us from. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.